Hello everybody, it's Joel again. Today we're going to get into some more mana rocks. I originally planned on doing all of them in one go, but there's like 300 of them, so this might take us a few goes. We actually got to the start of D, so we managed to do Darksteel, Ingot, and Decanter of Endless Water. So it looks like the first one we're starting with today is Diamond Kaleidoscope. Now what does this do? Alright, costs 4. You sacrifice a prism and you add 1 mana of any color. Alright. You pay 3 and tap it and you make a prism artifact creature. It's a 0/1. I don't really think I would consider this a mana rock. Yeah, it's got a mana ability, but that's a token generator. That is. It's a like a Whirler Maker or a Thopter Shop, but like infinitely worse. Yeah, you can sack the things for mana. It is like you can sack it and tap it as well, so you can make the guy and then sack it if it like would die or something. You can like pay 3 and make a guy that can block, maybe, and like sack it in response to it blocking. Maybe. This has never been reprinted. This is only from Visions. Alright, starting off with something of a bang, I guess. And now we're into the Dimir counterparts of the mana rocks that we covered last time. Dimir Cluestone, Dimir Keyrune, Dimir Locket, and Dimir Signet. So everything I had to say about the other ones will apply to these ones. Signet's obviously the best, that's like a standout mana rock. Locket, like you might be able to get away with. It's like kind of a bad Hedron Archive, but it taps for color. Keyrune, it becomes Keyrune becomes a unblockable guy, and that's actually like kind of noteworthy. It looks like this got reprinted in Zendikar Rising Commanders, and that was the Anawan Rogue deck, right? Yeah, so something like ninjas or rogues, you want to get in for damage, yeah, sure. Or even horrors, it's a horror. All these mana rocks that do turn into other guys, like you might find a use for them, like nichely. I don't know. And Dimir Cluestone's just, yeah, it's bad. Alright. Moving on to, okay, I've got it on Scryfall with the mana rock tag, and it's showing me Dowsing Device. Yeah, this is red ramp, just straight up. If you have artifacts, this is a red ramp card. I actually really like this card. I've played this a few times and it is pretty cool. It is a pretty good card. It's an artifact, it costs 1 and a red. Whenever it or another artifact enters your battlefield, you give a creature +1/+0 and haste until ends of turn. So this is like a one-shot haste effect, but it's also for any other artifact that enters while it's on the field. But also, if you have 4 or more artifacts, when this trigger happens, you transform Dowsing Device into a Geode Grotto, which taps for red, and you can do that the turn that this comes down. So if you play this, a Dowsing Device, and you have 4 artifacts, including itself, you just immediately transform it. So because it's 2 mana, it's something of a red rampant growth if you have enough artifacts. It actually has another ability too. You can pay 3 mana, so 2 and a red, and you tap it, and you give something haste and a power boost equal to the number of artifacts you control, which is actually pretty strong. Getting the extra power boost is really handy, and haste is really handy as well, especially for that commander. I might have put this in that deck. I should if I haven't. It's a really good card. I don't know about mana rock though. It's a land, so I don't know. Not really a mana rock. It's not like how I would think of a mana rock, but it is ramp. But if we're here talking about every artifact card that's also ramp, like we might be here for actually ages. It's alright, we're just hanging out. We could be here for ages. Who am I to stop myself? Alright, it looks like our next card is Dragon's Horde. Okay, it's a manalith, so it taps for mana of any color. And you can also tap it to remove a gold counter to draw a card. That's a pretty good draw ability, but it depends on how you get these counters. How do you get the counters? Whenever a dragon you control enters the battlefield, you put a gold counter on it. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. It is good. Yeah, any of those, like, you know, those like 3 mana like green enchantments or whatever, like Garruk's Uprising or whatever that other one is. The one from Magic Origins. Elemental Bond, that's it. Or Tribute to the World Tree. Another new one. Cool. Anyway, any of those 3 mana things that when creatures enter the battlefield you just draw a card. That's this, except it's for dragons. But I'm assuming if you're playing this in a dragon deck, most of your deck is going to be dragons. That's the way tribal decks work. This is pretty good. The only problem with this card is you can't tap it for mana and also tap it to draw a card on the same turn. So that's the biggest limiting factor of this. It's not the worst thing I've ever seen. Plus it's repeatable draw, assuming that you play dragons. Dragons are not like one of those tribes that you just spam with. Oh, unless you're playing, what's that background? Is it Fey Visitor that makes fairy dragon creature tokens? Like spits them out, just spews them out. This gets a counter for each thing, each dragon. So that thing, you could potentially just turn this into like a Phyrexian Arena. Once per turn you draw a card. Because you don't have to tap it. If you have ways to untap this for some reason, then like it gets way better if you have enough dragons. It's alright, it's pretty good. I think this is a good card. I would, if I was playing dragons, like, and maybe I wasn't playing green, because like, I don't know, maybe I'll play this. Depends on the other draw options in your deck, because this isn't the best draw option in the world. Like if you're playing Ur-Dragon, you play like Stinging Study, and I wonder how many people do that actually. That would be... I think playing Stinging Study and Duggo when he's only 7 is funny. But 10? Anyway, I'm getting off topic. Dragon's Horde is a good card. I think if you're playing dragons, you play this card, sort of. You can get away with it. If you don't play it though, it's not the end of the world. There's other better ramp and there's other better draws. So just because this is both, like it's not going to get the, you know, best of either world. So, you know, it's serviceable though. It looks like it's reprinted a bunch. Alright, we got some more garbage now. Drake Skull cameo. This is literally just a way worse version of everything in general. Alright, just throw it onto the garbage. Okay. Dreamstone Hedron. I think I mentioned this one at least once last time. It costs 6 and it taps for 3 colorless. So it's following that rate of you want it to kind of tap for half of what you put in for it so you can get back its mana in 2 turns, kind of. This thing also you can pay 3 and sacrifice it and draw 3 cards. I feel like I used to see more people play this. I feel like this used to be played a lot more. Just in general, not even in artifact decks or anything. I think the only place I've seen it be played recently is like colorless decks, like super turbo Eldrazi nonsense decks, like Zuladoc or something, where you just want so much mana and about 3/4 of your deck is mana rocks. In which case, this is a pretty good card. This is like an extra burst of mana. Yeah. Keep in mind though, like unless you're using that draw ability, this is just kind of a worse Thran Dynamo, but we'll get to Thran Dynamo. Probably not today, some way down the line we'll get to that card. Yeah, Dreamstone Hedron, it's fine. It's pretty hard to play nowadays. I'm pretty sure you could... It's a 6-drop, right? What do you want your 6-drops to do these days? Hell, I could play a 5-drop like Doom Whisperer. And that's a 5-drop. This is a 6-drop. This only taps for mana, but you can have a bunch of other value on your 5 and 6 drops. Usually you want mana to be earlier, like 2 or 3, maybe 4. You want your 5 and 6 drops to be bombs. This is not a bomb. This is a setup card. and it's not a card draw card, you're not paying 9 mana to draw 3 cards. At least you shouldn't be. If you are, you're probably playing mono red. Don't worry, I play mono red sometimes. Yeah, Dreamstone Hedron's fine. You know what, actually no, scratch that, it's not fine. Don't play this card. Unless you want to play like Eldrazi on turn like 7 or something. Yeah, you don't need this. You're not gonna like be in a situation where this would be a better 6-drop than about any other 6-drop that they printed in the last 5 years. So yeah, it's playable, but you know, I will raise an eyebrow if you play it. Alrighty, to the next one of the Dragon's Monuments. We've got Dromoka Monument. It's 3, it taps for green or white. Oh, and you pay 6 and it becomes a 4/3 guy with flying. Nah. I don't think I need to explain this one very much. It's just bad. Okay, for starters, you're in green. You're not playing this as a mana rock. You don't need this as a guy, because you presumably, if you want guys, you have a guy in this slot instead of ramp. If you want more ramp, play a guy that ramps, like Avatar of Growth, or anything else except this. Yeah, don't play this card. Oh gosh, this is a mana rock too, isn't it? Okay, dungeon map. It costs 3 and it taps for a colorless. Cool, off to a bad start. You can pay 3 and tap it and venture into the dungeon only as a sorcery. Oh my word. Functionally 4 mana for 1 venture is actually kind of... I think this and Dungeon Descent, the land, they were so terrified of making dungeons busted that this is like nerfed into the ground. This is actually an awful ability. A dungeon room is about, I don't know, like half a mana's worth of investment, or like payoff rather. Like, I don't know, if I'm going into like Lost Mines of Phandelver, the first room is Scry 1. You're gonna pay 4 mana and Scry 1. What else is there? There's create 1/1/1, or create a treasure token. You drain opponents for 1. You put a 1/1/1 counter. You slightly shrink something's power, or and then the last room is you draw a card. Even if this was just the last room all the time, the draw card, it's still only like kind of mid. It's like a slightly better Bonder's Ornament, I guess, or worse because it doesn't tap for color. Yeah, this thing, even this, the only way this thing would be kind of good is if it didn't you didn't pay any mana into it, you just tapped it and ventured. That would actually be cool, and I think that would still be a balanced card, but they really, really, really didn't want to break dungeons, it looks like. Yeah, even dungeon decks. I have a kind of a dungeon deck, and I wouldn't play this. There's no chance. Even if I was playing a actual dungeon deck instead of a Serac combo deck. Yeah, it's not good. Alrighty, Ebony Fly, hey? Ooh, look at that, it's 2, and it enters tapped. It taps for colors, so it's... Alright, what else does it do? Pay 4, you don't even have to tap it, pay 4, and you roll a d6. And then it becomes a XX, where X is the result. Okay, and it's got flying. Alright, so it's got flying, that's always a constant. It's got another ability too. When it attacks, an attacking creature gains flying until ends a turn. Alright, okay, so it gives something else flying. It's like, what bobblehead was it? Agility bobblehead, that's the one. Alright, so this thing can, for 4 mana, potentially become a 6/6, but it can also be a 1/1. If it's a 1/1, it's bad. I think, you know, but it's a dice roll, so you're not gonna, like, hope for it to be a 6/6 every time. You're just gonna assume that it's gonna be a 3/3 or something and get along with it. One thing I find interesting about this card is that it's whenever it attacks, just in general, you don't have to animate it with its own ability. If you have a commander that animates artifacts, this has an attack ability by itself, so you don't have to pay 4 to animate it. It doesn't have flying itself. It only gets flying if you animate it by its own ability. So if you Rise and Shine this, it's not going to have flying. But you can give something else flying. So you would need to... Okay, for this card to be good... Okay, to be clear, like, you could probably just play this. It's a 2-mana mana rock. It taps for 1. Even though it enters tapped, and even though it only taps for colorless, even though there's a lot better options, this is still fine. Even if you're not playing any of the better rocks, you could play this. It's still good. A 2-mana mana rock is just good, regardless of what it does. And this thing is pretty good. If you especially want decks where you want guys to be unblocked, or you want guys to have flying for whatever reason, like you're playing a flying tribal deck, yeah, it's a good card. Like, it's a 2-mana mana rock. Yeah, for 2-mana rocks, this is a good card. It's actually kind of expensive. It's only been reprinted 1 time, and it's for an uncommon, it's about $4. So people seem to see this card's value. Not too shabby. Elementalist's Palette. It costs 3 and it taps for mana of any color, so it's a manalith. But you can tap it and add colorless for each charge counter on it. But you can only spend the mana on X costs. And the way you get charge counters is by casting an X spell. And it gets 2 charge counters. So, let's just get this out of the way. It's a manalith. If you don't play any X spells, if you don't get any value off of anything else in the card, it's a manalith, right? You need to cast an X spell, right? And then it gets 2 charge counters. So that means you can tap it for 2 mana. That's a Worn Power Stone, Chief. The only way this is really good is if you have multiple X spells that you can cast. The only deck I can think of with a lot of X spells is Hydras. Hydras have a lot, because they're all X spells, pretty sure. Hydras would love this card. The cool thing about this as well is you can actually tap this off. First of all, before I mention anything, once you get charge counters on this, you can proliferate the counters. I don't know how many decks with X spells are doing that, but maybe you've got some... The other thing I was going to get to is that you actually don't have to tap this and cast a spell that costs X. It just needs to be spent on a cost that contains X. So you can spend this on an activated ability that costs X. I don't know how many of those there are. Since when is this card expensive? This card sucks. It's $6. And it's... I guess it hasn't been reprinted. I don't think it's... Even in Hydras, I don't even think this is good. Because you're in green. You have a more ramp than you would know what to do with. And if you're playing like Marneus, Lucia Kane... No, not Marneus. Marneus is Marneus Calgar. Magus, Lucia Kane. If you're playing Lucia Kane, that's an X-Spell deck. I don't think it's that good. I don't think it's good. Even in X-Spell decks. In like any other deck, you would rather just play like anything else. Oh, alright. Moving on to another one. Empowered Auto Generator. This is another one I see in like those Atraxa decks that want to like proliferate counters and stuff. It taps... Well, okay. It costs 4. So, what are we getting for 4 mana? It does enter the battlefield tapped. Also, you tap it and you put a charge counter on it, and then you add X mana of any one color, where X is the number of charge counters on it. So this is interesting because like it taps and it puts a charge counter on itself as part of its actual mana ability. Yeah. So yeah, entering tapped is a pretty big downside. So you need to wait for next turn, then you get 1 mana. Whereas like a Hedron Archive, you get 2 mana the same turn and then the next turn. So you're functionally getting 4 mana over 2 turns. This gives you 1 mana over 2 turns. This will progressively get more mana though. On turn 2, after this comes down, you get 1 mana. On turn 3, you get 2 mana. On turn 4, you get 3 mana. That's when it starts getting pretty good. That's like a whatever throne of something or other. I guess we'll get to that at some point. You can proliferate the counters as well. So this majority of the places I see this card is you're playing Atraxa or something and you want to proliferate the counters on this so you get... But keep in mind, to put a counter on this, it needs to survive a whole turn. It probably will, because I feel like people have been playing less board wipes recently. Because they're pansies, and they don't want games to last, like, 3 hours. A game's not going to last 3 hours. I mean, yeah, it might, but what do you do? Like, do you not like playing Magic? Do you just want to like get the game over with and go like play something else? Okay, quick tangent, quick like side note. Board wipes are becoming like just underappreciated. I actually really dislike the games where everybody's board is like gummed up with like creatures and no one wants to attack like anyone because they're all bad attacks and we're just kind of on a stalemate. People are like, oh, board wipes are gonna, you know, make the game go forever. But yeah, but like, what about these gummed up board states? Every single deck, it feels like, is just swarming the entire field with crap and no one can do anything. Especially if no one's got combos, right? Like a lot of us in my playgroup, we play with combos, so that's a, you know, decent way to win a game in that scenario. But like, if you're not playing combos, how the hell are you supposed to win? Like, the field's gumped up. Like, how many finishers do you think can get through like 3 people's entire fields? They don't. You play a board wipe. I think people are overestimating the amount of protection spells they need to play because of board wipes. Having a protection spell and protecting yourself from a board wipe is a game-changing ability. No doubt. So, yeah. Anyway, completely off topic, completely aside. We're trying to talk about mana rocks. I'm going to start getting into like a bajillion tangents, and this video is going to be like 10 hours. But it's fine. We're only going up to G. Yeah, we're going up to G. Alright. We're gonna see about getting all through those. Alright. So empowered auto generator, whatever, sure, good. Play it, proliferate the counters, like, but if you're not proliferating the counters, don't play it, it's bad. Okay, back to bobbleheads. We have Endurance Bobblehead now. It's a monolith. Cool. What else does it do? If it's just this, you pay 3 and tap it, so it's functionally 4. You give 1 creature indestructible. That's repeatable. I shouldn't discount the power boost. That maybe matters sometimes. Maybe. Only as a sorcery. Alright. Okay, that just changed my mind on this. If this was instant speed, it would probably be not that good, but it would still be usable. This is completely ridiculously unplayable at sorcery speed, right? What are you going to do? You're going to make... unless you like have a commander that you have an attack trigger and you just don't want to die. But there's like a... like, how many other better ways of doing that is there? There's like reconnaissance and like... oh, I don't even want to get into it. Yeah, or you could just play like a Darksteel Plate and just give your commander indestructible like permanently or whatever creature you want to attack with. Instead of playing like Reconnaissance or Griselax or something. Whatever that other enchantment is that you can like return things to hand. No, it's not good. No, I wouldn't play this. Not even in a deck where you would want to attack with something. Even in a Bubblehead deck, like, okay, maybe this is good if you have a couple of Bubbleheads, or if you can like copy this somehow, but still not that good. You need multiple creatures. So not only would you need multiple of Bubbleheads, you would need multiple creatures that you want to be indestructible, like you're either attacking with them or whatnot. Nah, it's not that good. Alright. We get to a proper card now. I play this in actually a lot of decks. This is Everflowing Chalice. It's actually a 0 mana artifact. And it taps for a colorless for each charge counter on it. The way you get charge counters on it is you actually have the multi-kicker ability. So for every 2 mana you put into this when you cast it, you actually get 1 charge counter when it enters the battlefield. So for 2 mana, you can play this guy and it enters with 1 charge counter, and then you just tap it for 1 mana, colorless mana. I always pretty much think of this as a 2 mana rock because it's what I'm going to cast it most of the time for. There are some other decks that, like, I play this where I also play 4 mana rocks, and this is kind of both. You can double kick this, you can pay 4 mana into it, and you can have it enter with 2 charge counter, so it taps for 2 mana, which is on rate. It doesn't have any other upside. But then you can also, if you're really inclined, play this for like 6 or 8 I've actually done that before. I've had a game at least a couple times where I had this card and it was like kind of late game, and I didn't really have much to do on my turn. I was like, do I just want to wait and see what happens? So I play this for like 8 or 10, so then it taps for like more mana, and maybe I have like an X spell or something in my hand for next turn. So it's just a hidden use. Oh, actually, another hidden use of this card is you can pay it for 0 and not kick it at all, in case you want an artifact for something, which I actually have this in a couple decks that do care about that, and occasionally I will play this for 0 if I didn't need a rock, and I just wanted fodder for something. I play this in Farid, because it, you know, it has the old border printing, you know, how cool is that? So I can just play it out as a 0 thing and just sacrifice it to something. I also play it in Tevesh and Dargo, I believe. I can also just sack it to Tevesh, to Dargo, and then sack Dargo to Tevesh. So yeah, this is a really good card. This is one of the best mana rocks we've actually looked at so far, at least. It's very playable. You can play it in, you know, any deck really. But yeah, I would consider this a 2 mana rock, but you know, it's got a bunch of other upsides that make it a pretty good card. Alrighty, our next one is actually a pretty new card, and I don't think I've seen anyone play this before. I've definitely read this card, I think. Eye of O'Hare Tack. It's a manalith. I love manaliths. We love manaliths. No, we don't. Alright. What's the upside of this being a garbage mana rock such as a manalith? Okay. It crafts with two that share a card type. I love that wording. It's like top 3 wordings. Best wording is definitely Mythos of Nethroi, and you guys cannot convince me otherwise. That's a great wording on a card. Anyway, craft with 2 that share a card type. 6. Alright, thankfully it's got a giant paragraph of friggin' reminder text to tell me what that does. You pay 6 and you exile this artifact, and then you exile 2 cards, presumably, from among other permanents you control and or cards in your graveyard. I think the reason they don't say cards is because like it's the battlefield and the graveyard, even though they're cards in both zones. I think with the other ones that like craft with artifacts or whatever, they're artifacts on the field, but artifact cards in the graveyard. This just crafts with any cards as long as I share a card type. Anyway, so okay, I'm making this way too complicated. You pay 6, you exile this, and you exile 2 things from your field or graveyard that have the same card type, and then you transform this. It transforms into Apex Observatory. It enters the battlefield tapped, but as it enters, you choose a card type shared among the 2 cards used to craft it. So say if you pay 6 and you exile 2 creatures with this, you get to choose creature. If they're 2 like artifacts. If they're 2 artifact creatures, you can choose creature or artifact, which is kind of funny. Alright. It taps, and it makes the next spell you cast this turn of the chosen type be able to be cast without paying its mana cost. That's pretty cool. That's a cool mana rock. Right. I don't really think I would play this as a mana rock. I'm not including Eye of O'Hare Tack in my mana rock slot. For one, because it's a manalith, and if any card is a manalith, you're playing it as something else. Like Cursed Mirror is like a worse manalith, but at least that's got a really good ability. This is 6. Okay, just to be clear, you pay 3 to cast this card. You pay 6, and you can like tap itself to pay its own ability, so it's like 5. So you're paying 8. Would you pay 8 for an Apex Observatory? Assuming you get to sort of get the card type that you want. You just once per turn tap and you get something for free. That's a one with a multiverse, right? That's what that does. Even with the free cast, it's not that good. And you have to exile some fodder, so you need extra stuff, extra steps. I don't think it's that good. Yeah. No, it's cool though. I reckon you could play it. There's probably a reason why I haven't seen it yet. Interesting card anyway. I have Ramos. Taps for blue. It costs 3, taps for blue, and you sack it to add blue. I don't know. It's interesting, I guess. Okay, to start with, if you're just keeping this around to tap for mana, it's bad. It's a worse mana. The ability to sack it and add mana is like a burst option. So like on one turn you tap for 2 mana, but then you lose this thing. Whatever, it's interesting. Fabrication Foundry, it costs 2. It does cost white mana to cast. And it taps for white, but you can only spend the mana to cast an artifact spell or activate an artifact ability. So in white artifact decks, this is a 2 mana rock that taps for your color. Yeah, seems alright so far. It actually does something else. You pay 2 and a white and tap it, and you exile. I haven't ever read this before. I think I've just read the first ability and went, yeah, it's alright, white artifact deck, sure. Alright. You pay 2 and a white and you tap and you exile 1 or more other artifacts you control with total mana value X, and then you return an artifact card with mana value X from your graveyard to the battlefield. X or less, only as a sorcery. Okay, so you pay 3 mana and you tap this, that's like 4 mana kind of, because this also taps for mana and you can't do both. You exile a couple of artifacts and then you bring something back, and it's a sorcery. It's white reanimation for artifacts, which is actually kind of interesting on like a permanent. The bad thing about this card is you have to exile the fodder. It costs 3. I was gonna say if it costs like less than 3, it would be cool. The other thing I noticed is you can reanimate a 0-drop by exiling a token, I'm pretty sure. Yep, you can do that. I actually don't think I like this ability very much. It's because it exiles, that's scary. I want stuff to go in my graveyard so I can reanimate it with this thing. I know why they've done that, because then you can get into like some loops, I'm sure. Okay, it's a good card. Like, if you're playing a white artifact deck, this is a good card. I don't know how much you're going to use that other ability because it's kind of sketchy. But it's a good card. It's a playable card. This is it's a 2 mana rock. How bad could it be? Like, it's not going to be bad at all. All right, moving swiftly on. Oh yes, Felwar Stone, cool. 2 mana rock. That's pretty much all I need to say. The thing with this card actually is the more colors you play, the better this gets. Have I ever played this in 2 colors? Maybe I have. Like, even if this taps for, okay, even if this doesn't tap for any of your colors, like you're playing opponents that have completely different colors to you, it taps for color of a land an opponent controls. But even if you didn't tap for any of your colors, it's still good because you could still use the mana. It's just kind of colorless mana, really. But if it does tap for at least one of your colors, this thing is outstanding. This thing is a really good card. I think people should play this. They do play it. It's a very popular card. Yeah, I don't need to get into specifics about this one. This one's a good card. Whoa. Alright. Field Miss Border Post. Okay, what? Alright. It taps for 1 of 2 colors and it costs those colors to cast, so you're not mana fixing with this. And it's a worse manalith already, so we're off to a great start. Cool. It's actually got a really interesting casting cost though, like alternate casting cost. You can pay 1 generic mana, and you return a basic land you control to its owner's hand instead of paying this mana cost. Also it enters the battlefield tapped. I might have actually considered briefly playing this in Tameshi because you can like bounce a land to get the card draw. I don't think there's any like words I can use to describe this card. You want a card, okay. If you don't pay it for its alternate cost, it is abhorrent. It is a manalith that enters tapped, doesn't even tap for all the colors, costs colors. Yeah, the alternate casting cost is how you're playing this card. You have to return a basic land to your hand. So that's however many mana that land would have produced that game. Just ignore this card. This card sucks. This card is just, yeah, I don't know. Okay, Fire Diamond. Good card. Diamonds. You don't care that they enter tapped. They're just a 2 mana rock. They tap for your color. It's just a done deal. Just a good card. You can play this in 1 color because there's not a lot of options for you in 1 color for mana rocks. I think I play this in Frid. I have the Mirage version, the old border one. Yeah. It's a good card. I think it's a good card. All the diamonds are good. Oh, hey, check this out. You know what else is a good card? Firemine Vessel. 4 mana, it enters tapped, and it taps for 2 mana of different colors. So tapping for 2 is on rate for 4 mana rock. Doesn't... I don't know. Actually, entering tapped is a little bit of a downside. The upside of like a Hedron Archive is that it enters untapped and you can like draw the cards. But this, you tap for colored mana. Any deck where you want 4 mana rocks and you're in colors, this is a pretty good option. Yeah, it's a good card. Alright, so we got another border post. I think you know how I feel about border posts. We'll just Firewild border post. It's the Gruul border post, I guess. Yeah, we just ignore these. Oh, okay. More Universes Beyond. This is from Doctor Who. It's the 500-year diary. It's actually a legendary artifact that's a clue, so you can pay 2 and sack it and draw a card. It enters the battlefield tapped, and it taps for blue for each clue you control. Alright. So, just by itself, it already is a clue, so it enters tapped and it costs 4 and it only taps for 1. So it's a bad mana rock if it's just itself. Even though you can like sack it and draw a card. Like it's kind of a worse Commander Sphere ability because it's a clue. This thing has absolutely tremendous ceiling. If you have like 3 clues at least on the field, including this, so you only need a couple extra, this thing is tapping for oodles of mana. But I've seen like dozens of clues on the field before. Like if you're playing Tivit, or like any commander that, like Denick, or not Taser because that's Orzhov, but any commander that you're playing clues that spits out clues by itself, or that you have clue makers in your deck. This thing is ridiculous. This thing is like, I don't know, Tolarian Academy levels are ridiculous. No, it's not. But it's going to tap for a lot of mana. So this is a good card in a clue deck. It's not a good card anywhere else. Don't play it anywhere else. But if you're playing clues, this is an outstanding include. 100%. Oh yeah, I know this card. Some mana rock this is. This is not a mana rock. I mean, it is, but alright, we'll get into it. It's Flywheel Racer. It's a vehicle. It crews for 1 and it's got vigilance. But it taps to add a mana of any color only if it's a creature. You need to crew this for it to tap for mana. It's a 2 mana rock if you can do that though, and it taps for mana of any color, so that's actually excellent. I never really thought of this card. Like I do know this card, but I've never really like thought of it before. It never like crosses my mind exactly. If you're playing a deck where you have a commander perhaps that is like 1 mana or 2 mana, maybe 1 mana. Maybe you're playing Rograk. If you're playing Rograk, first of all, there's probably a bajillion better things to do with Rograk, but this becomes a 2 mana rock. This is a bad vehicle. It's just a 3/2 with vigilance. Since it needs to be a creature to tap for mana, presumably you could also attack with it, and it's got vigilance. I'm assuming that's why it's got vigilance, because then you can attack with it and tap with it. Okay. In a deck where you can consistently crew this, ideally on like turn 2, that's what the reason I mentioned Rograk in the first place, is because you can crew it on turn 2, and it might actually be a 2 mana rock. Okay, we got another newer card. They've been like actually churning out these 3 mana rocks quite frequently. This one's called Forge's Foundry. It's originally printed in Thunder Junction Commander. It costs blue. It's 3 mana and it taps for blue. Okay, so off to a bad start. This has another ability though. When you spend that blue mana that you tap this to cast an instant or sorcery with mana value 3 or less, you exile the spell instead of putting it into its owner's graveyard as it resolves. So this exiles instants and sorceries with mana 3 or less that you cast with it. Okay, it's got another ability, so let's see what that does. You pay 5 and tap it, and then you cast any number of spells from among the cards exiled with Forge's Foundry without paying their mana cost. Only as a sorcery. They just like killing my fun, don't they? They just like making things sorcery speed when they have no right to be. What if I want to like tap this to cast counter spells, and then like for 5 mana, like late game, I could like quadruple counter something. This is probably good in a Spellslinger deck, actually. I just realized, like, it's a pretty good mana rock in a Spellslinger deck, like especially if you have a bunch of cantrips and stuff, because you can tap this and you like have a bunch of cantrips lined up for like later, for like a bunch of triggers, like off your Gutter Snipe or something. Yeah, I think that's where they included this. I'm pretty sure, because I'm assuming this was in the Stellar Lee deck, right? The Izzet Spellslinger deck. Stellar Lee's a combo card, but we don't talk about it. Yeah, this is a pretty good card. This is a very good mana rock for Spellslinger decks that have blue. Doesn't have to be Izzet necessarily. It can be Azorius. Are you playing? What's his name? Raph. Yeah, Raph Capuchon. Anyway, Azorius Spellslinger. I just had to think of that off the top of my head. Alright. Forge's Foundry, good card. Pharisian Totem. It costs 3 taps for red, and if it's a creature, it can block an additional creature. You can pay 5 and make it a 4/4 with trample. The upside of having this Manalith is not good. Bad creature, bad card. We don't talk about it. Another guy, Fountain of Ichor. It's actually a Manalith. It's a real Manalith. It's 3 generic and it taps for mana of any color. So cool. You pay 3 and it becomes a dinosaur. A 3/3. Alright, stop with these mana rocks that turn into creatures. Okay, I know why these exist. They're good for limited, but yeah, we don't want them. Okay, another one. Fractured Power Stone. I actually have seen this card. I've actually played this card. Yeah, I used to have a buddy that had Plane Chase, and he would have the Fractured Power Stones, and he'd be like, hey, put this in your deck, like to play Plane Chase, like in case it comes up. So he just had like a bunch of them. What this does is it's a 2 mana rock and it taps for colorless, so it's actually an acceptable card to play even if you're not playing Plane Chase. But you can also tap this and roll the plane or die. So functionally, this can serve as quite a few mana if you want to roll the plane or die like a bunch of times. Because if I'm not mistaken, it's like free the first time, then for each other time you roll it, you can pay 1 generic mana for the turn. And this can potentially be like your 4th roll or something, and this could serve as like about 3 mana. So this is a great card in Plane Chase, obviously, but it's a good card elsewhere. In fact, people used to play this, I'm pretty sure, as just a 2 mana rock, because there just wasn't like other good options. I mean, there was, but this was like another option that people had. It's a really good card. It's a 2 mana rock, even though it's colorless, even though its upside is kind of specific. It's good. Gatewatch Beacon, it taps for white, it costs white, so we're off to the worst Manalith, like, you know, modern design of 3 mana rocks sort of thing. Right, okay. But it enters the battlefield and it gets 3 loyalty counters. Oh, it's from Commander Masters. This was in the Guff deck, wasn't it? They print these strange, like, specific mana rocks in these decks. Or anyway, whenever a Planeswalker you control enters the battlefield, if this Gatewatch Beacon has loyalty counters, you can move 1 loyalty counter from the Gatewatch Beacon onto that Planeswalker. That's just a free ability. You just get that. Yeah, you just get that. It's a mana rock, but you also get a little extra loyalty on your Planeswalkers. You can proliferate the counters on this too, so you actually can do that quite a few times if you're playing a very, a deck that actually likes that. It's interesting. If my Planeswalker deck was white, would I play this? I mean, I probably would because it's an artifact. Yeah, I don't really proliferate at all in my Planeswalker deck. I have one card that proliferates in that whole deck, Throne of Geth. and it doesn't matter. Like, getting extra loyalty is pretty good. Especially if some planeswalkers getting 1 extra loyalty actually means the difference between 1 or more abilities. So I don't know. Yeah, alright. Here we go. Gilded Lotus. 5 mana, taps for 3 mana of any 1 color. This is actually a classic mana rock. I actually still think it's pretty good. I think I play this in... I'm pretty sure I play this in Breya. Because that's like... Artifact. Something or other. They just reprinted this in Foundations. It looks like it's still a couple bucks. This is a good card. I think the biggest downside of this card is that it's 5, and there's a bunch of cool stuff you can do for 5. Like I mentioned, Doom Whisperer. That's just a pet card of mine. Love that card. Getting 3 mana on your rock is kind of rare in 4 mana territory. That's kind of a 5 or 6 mana thing. This is also colored mana. This also doesn't enter tapped. You can use it right away. It's a pretty good card. I think it's a good card. I don't think you can go wrong with it. It's kind of got to be in a specific deck though. You're not using this as ramp like early games, obviously, because it's 5. So you want to be able to use this mana. If you're kind of just playing it like late game, you want some other additional upside with this card. For example, it being an artifact. Some decks care about artifacts. Like, the thing with mana rocks in general is that if you're playing, personally for me, I don't really have any decks that play mana rocks that also aren't artifact decks that can take extra advantage of them. But there are decks like that. Decks that aren't green, for example, like Spellslinger decks and stuff, that they play mana rocks as their ramp in their deck, and they don't have any extra artifact synergies. For me, I don't really have that experience. I just play only artifact decks. Or green decks that ramp, not using artifacts to ramp, right? So for Gilded Lotus, if you're just using it as ramp, it's like fine. It's got decent upside. It's got a pretty decent investment too. So it's like, if you lose this, it's kind of a bummer. But it's a good card. I think it's a good card. Alright, moving on. Okay, we've got, another Commander deck one. Glistening Sphere. This was in the Exhel Precon from Obi-Wan. I love that set, by the way. That set was amazing. I love this card too. It enters the battlefield tapped, but when it enters the battlefield, you proliferate. So you get a mana rock that proliferates. It's a manalith though that enters tapped, so, well, dang. But you're presumably gonna want this in a deck where you want to proliferate. Could I play this in my Planeswalker deck? I might actually think about that, because that deck has a lot of mana rocks, and I actually might think about this. Yeah, so, and it's got the extra upside of it taps for 3 mana if one of your opponents has, they're corrupted, so if they have 3 or more poison counters. If you're playing poison, this is actually an excellent card. Like, if you're playing poison, you play this card. This card's freaking crazy in poison. It's like that conversion apparatus that's like 3 mana and taps for 3. That we talked about last week. And yeah, this is like a similar sort of scenario. If you're playing poison, this is excellent. Wow, holy crap, this card is $10. Maybe I won't pick one up for my Planeswalker deck, because it's not that good if you just do the proliferate. Yeah, but like, you're playing this and it's a mana rock. It's a pretty good upside. If you get like enough value off the proliferate, this is excellent. I think this is a great card. Alright, what else have we got? Yeah, we're on the home stretch here. We got Glittering Stockpile. I've played this card before in my treasure deck. I think. I'm pretty sure I have. It's interesting. It's a kind of a worse manalith. We'll get into it. 3 mana, it's red, but it taps for red. But also when you tap it for mana, you get a stash counter on it. What you can do with that... Oh, this artifact's a treasure, by the way. So if you have any synergies with treasures, specifically the card type treasure, that's what this is. What else does this do? So every turn you tap this, it gets a stash counter. You can actually tap it and sacrifice it, and you add mana for each stash counter on it. It's got to be mana of 1 color, though. So it's kind of like a better one of those batteries that like stocks up mana. But you stock up the mana while you're also tapping this for mana. Not doing it a very good way, by the way. It's just a Just a Manalith, taps for 1. This actually is a pretty good card. I think this is a good card. You could play it in treasure decks, you could play it in decks that like artifact decks. You can use this as a ritual late game. It's good. It's a good card. It's not good if you don't use it for anything else besides it being a mana rock. But if you use it for like a burst of mana for you like really want to, you know, get a burst, it's good. We're on to the Golgari conglomerate now. Golgari Cluestone, Golgari Keyrune, Golgari Locket, and Golgari Signet. Yep, talked about these cards already. Golgari Keyrune turns into a Death Toucher, so yeah, maybe that's relevant for some decks. All the other thoughts I've had to say about all the other ones apply to these ones. So then we move on to Green Mana Battery, which is, again, a type of card I've just talked about and I've been talking about for a while. Extra terrible because you're in friggin' green, so no, you're not playing this. So next we're getting to Grim Monolith. Alright. Oh, holy moly. What do I talk about this card with? This is a ritual. I don't know if anyone really considers this a mana rock. It costs 2 and it taps for 3 colors. So it's literally a ritual. It doesn't untap during your untap step, and you pay 4 to untap it. So yeah, it's a ritual. And then you like sacrifice it to something. Maybe I could play this in for red because it's all border. Except it costs like $300 and I'm not going to spend that on this card. It's a reserve list, that's why. Yeah, so it's a really strong card, like incredibly strong card. It's a ritual. It's just like extra mana positive mana rock. It doesn't really have the same combo potential that Basalt Monolith has unless you like make this tap for double mana or something. Because it costs 4 to untap it and it only taps for 3. So if this taps for 4, you can kind of just tap it and untap it infinitely, but Basalt Monolith can already do that, and it's a better option in that case. If you have anything that you can do with that. It's freaking bananas. It's a ridiculous card. It's crazy. Yeah, it's not really worth explaining too much. It's just a mana positive, like, ritual, kind of. It's not really a mana rock, as I would traditionally call it. Alrighty, so now we're getting to the Gruul conglomerate. It's a Cluestone and then Keyrune. The Keyrune turns into a trampling guy. And Locket and Signet. And they're all like kind of the same, except, you know, they're green. You don't really need mana rocks in a green deck unless you're playing like Gimbal. I played Gimbal one time. I played mana rocks in that green deck and I felt really dirty. Alright. It's self-explanatory. Okay, last one for today. Guardian Idol. It's a 2 mana rock. It enters the battlefield tapped and it taps for colors. And you can pay 2 and tap it to become a guy. So just all the other ones we talked about, the upside of the card was supposed to be that it turned into a guy. This card is already a good card because it's a 2 mana rock. And it also has the upside of being a guy. The guy sucks. It is a 2/2 for 2 mana. Functionally for 3 mana because you'd kind of want to attack for this and you don't get to tap this for mana. Whatever. 2 mana rock. It's serviceable. You can play this. You don't need to care about it being a friggin' creature. Is what it is. Yeah. It's not the most interesting card to end on, but yeah, there we go. So I'm going to leave it at that. We'll pick it up with H. We'll pick it up with H next week. So yeah, thanks everybody for watching. I will see you on the flip side.